Just so that I have something gun related in this video, this is my Glock 43. There are many like it, but mine is OD. There's still many like it. Glock 43, OD green frame. Anyway, this video, I actually put together some talking points. This is not scripted. This is just a list of talking points so that I don't get completely sidetracked and go off on tangents. So I'm going to read a little bit of this and then I'm going to discuss each topic. An American Cold Civil War. What is a cold civil war? So what I have here. Civil wars are defined as a violent conflict within a country fought by organizations that aim to take power at the center or in a region or change government policies. Okay, so we already see this happening. We see this happening in some of the protests that are going on in larger urban centers. We see this happening with the Antifa movement. We see this happening all over. The Cold War was a state of geopolitical tension after World War II between powers of the Eastern Bloc, Soviet Union and satellite states, and powers in the Western Bloc, the United States, NATO, and its allies. The Cold Civil War is the deep divisions in U.S. politics, media, and society. If you watch the news, if you read the news, or check out news media on social media, check out news headlines on social media. My bad. It seems as though the majority of the media is more concerned with clickbaity titles and views than what they are actually reporting an event or facts. They're more concerned with reporting to you their opinion of a fact, their opinion of an event. And this has become more and more and more commonplace to the point where that's pretty much about all that we get from the news media is a report of their opinion on something that's happened. And with this, it's usually meant to be inflammatory. It's meant to get a rise out of people and to honestly get people arguing. In America, a cold civil war, division by race, religion, immigration status, socioeconomic status, among other differences, being politicized. Again, if you pay attention to the media, everything is so divisive and polarizing. Every single thing. It's to the point where people are finding racism in the color of robots. Really? The color of a robot is something that you're finding racism in. And it's basically anything that certain groups of people can come up with to create division or virtue signal to other people. It seems like that's the main goal here. It's not to even report facts anymore. Let's see. Extremists on both sides of the political divide. Activists, protests. You see people talking about like an active, violent fighting civil war on both sides. You have people calling for it on both sides. We are basically a nation that is so deeply divided that I really don't know of anything right off the top of my head that could bring this country back together. You have people so far on the left and so far on the right that are so extreme in their views, and the internet gives them a megaphone for their voice to be heard. And you have a lot of people that are caught up in the middle that either don't know which side of the fence they fall on, or they're to the point where they're checking out. They have become so fed up with either side that they're checking out on the issue. One of the questions that I've been thinking of lately: what could ignite this civil war, and what happens if it becomes a hot civil war? Okay, so one of the things, if you look at the current situation in politics and in social media, in media, one of the things I think could kick this off and actually make it a hot civil war, which, mind you, would be completely different from the Civil War that our country experienced in the 1860s. It would be completely different than that. One of the things I think could kick this off would be if President Trump wins re-election in 2020. There are so many people who are just literally, they're expressing blind anger. My cat's gone nuts. Anyway, they're expressing blind anger. You ask them, well, what is it exactly that you're mad about? Well, he's this, he's that. Well, okay, well, can you give me facts and explain to me how he's this and that? Well, he just is, and you are too, because you won't agree with me. You know, it's shit like that, man. You know, whatever happened to being able to sit down and have a civil discussion or a debate or a disagreement? Whatever happened to that? People just flat out want to fight about things like that anymore. There was a time, not that long ago, probably, I'm going to say back around the time that Obama was elected into office, and through a good portion of his presidency, at least through his first term, that for the most part, the average person could sit down and have a debate, discussion about politics. Friends could do this and walk away, whether they agreed to disagree or whether they ended up agreeing on something. They could have a conversation and not hate each other at the end of it, but because of their political affiliations or their political ideas. And what I noticed it starting to turn into around the second term was that people were no longer open to discussions like that. People started, and I'm talking about people on both sides, people on the right and the left. People were no longer open to discussions like that. They started to close themselves off and immerse themselves in their little echo chambers of political agreements. So we have the up around the end of the last couple of years of the Obama administration, things really started to heat up in that aspect. And you know, even things I noticed with people that I was friends with then that I barely talk to now. And it's not because of me. It's not because I won't talk to them. It's because they've become so immersed in their political ideology that that's what defines them now. When Hillary did not win the election, it was, you know, leading up to that point, the last year of the Obama administration, and up until Donald Trump winning the presidential election, people really flipped that switch. And it's almost like people who were more left-leaning just fell off an edge, and people who were more right-leaning also fell off an edge. And it's like that wall between them was so great that it was so high that there's no way that they could come over it and come to any kind of an agreement on anything. There's zero common ground between people for any kind of an agreement in a political conversation. And it's only been getting worse over the last couple of years. And I see a lot of people on the left blaming President Trump for damn near anything they can imagine, blaming him for that political divide. But it's not him. At least it's not 100% him. It may be some of his ideologies and some of the things that he says that get people stirred up, but it's also other political leaders. It's also other activists. It's also the individual allowing something like that to define them, something like that to completely take over their mind. It's just, it's to the point where we are seeing more and more violence happening, more and more threats of violence. You have people literally calling for the death of their opposition. I mean, it's it's getting to the point of just flat out ridiculousness. So what would happen? What would happen if this truly became a hot civil war? What would happen? Let's say some event. We could call it the 2020 election. We call it whatever you all can imagine. But what would actually happen to us, the American citizen, in the event of a hot civil war sparking off? Now, keep in mind, I said that this would be completely different. This would be a completely different animal from what our country experienced in the 1860s. It would be more, in my opinion, it would probably be more terrorism related, domestic terrorism, which Antifa are domestic terrorists, flat out. Let's see. What did I have noted here? Okay. So, with riots, massive protests, widespread acts of violence, vandalism, things of that nature, you're going to see a furthering of the police state. You're going to see police most likely become more heavily armed, a heavier presence, and it will make more of that transition from community policing into the police being there, basically seeing everyone as an enemy and there to control the population. Since the military can't necessarily be used, militarization of the police to control the population is most likely what we will see a lot more of. We're already seeing this right now. I'm thankful to live in a community that's fairly small. Our police officers here, county, city, these people have a vested interest in the community. They live here. Most of them are from here. They're our, as I talked about in my last video, they are our family. They are our friends. They are our neighbors. They are people that we know, people that we have some kind of a connection to, other than I'm a citizen that's potentially breaking the law. I'm law enforcement here to punish and oppress. I mean, that's, there's a huge difference between those two types of policing, but I'm not going to go so far into that. But another possibility is the installation of martial law, if not nationwide, at least in certain urban centers, places of high population where violence and rioting would be more widespread. Again, I don't think that we would see anything like that here where I live and where a lot of you probably live. But you're talking about major urban centers like Chicago, New York, Louisville, maybe even. Martial law, which may not even be full blown martial law, but I could see police, National Guard, maybe even cost of patrols, curfews, basically just a crackdown on every movement that a citizen makes. I could see that possibly happening to try and suppress some of the fighting and rioting. Another thing that we come to is the possibility of a coup or an attempted coup within our own government, political takeover within our own government. Cases where elected officials have vowed not to follow the votes of their constituents. This has already happened. We had Republican representatives. We had Republican elected officials in states during the 2016, 2015-2016 presidential race. We had elected officials who were vowing not to vote according to the Electoral College. I'm not going to get into the Electoral College because that's a completely different topic for a different video. But we had people that were flat out saying, I don't care what our voters say, I'm not giving my electoral vote to Donald Trump. That goes completely against not only their constituents, but it's not right to do that to any of the other people who did or did not vote for them. Yes, I said even those who did not vote for them. Because when you are an elected representative, you are to serve. You are a public servant of the people, not just those who voted for you. So a coup within our own government. We also see the beginnings of that right now with the Democratic elected officials. If you've watched any State of the Union address, observe how they act. They are so completely against this president that even if he does something with which they should agree, if he says something they should even says something that they should agree with, or that goes for them, they're against it. How stupid is that? If you've been watching any of the presidential debates, any of the Democratic presidential candidate debates, the Democratic Party is so torn apart that their main focus is trying to scramble to the top. How many of them are running? How many of them are trying to become the Democratic presidential candidate? How many of them are trying? And they're tearing each other apart to do it. Should they not be getting behind each other and trying to push certain ones that are stronger to rise to the top and become the next president of the United States? That's what would make sense to me. But instead, they just want to tear each other down and run a campaign of bullshit. So yeah, a coup within our own government, I really think that that's something that could very well happen in 2020. Something else that we've seen, secret groups trying to run things outside of regular government. We've seen this happening up through the campaign of President Trump, with Google talking about preventing the re-election of President Donald Trump. High up people in the company talking about manipulating search results to affect an election. Why is that even a possible thing? So, going back to a little bit earlier, what could bring us back together? And I've been quoting Mark Gerzon. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But Some might believe that the answer lies in their side winning the political fight. Many others just feel hopeless that any outcome will change the dynamic. Faith in our government is at an all-time low. Yes, it absolutely is. It has been for a long time. It has been since well before the Obama administration. It has been since before the Bush and Clinton administrations. The divide has become wider than ever, and it really has. If you look outside of small communities, if you look nationwide, the political divide amongst people has become wider than ever. With more and more Americans opting out of the political process altogether. So what's to be done to change that? So that's one thing that I see a tremendous amount of. Looking at even in local elections, the voter turnout numbers are pretty low. And I see more and more people saying, my vote doesn't count. Votes are manipulated. My vote does not count. Only the votes of those with enough money count is one of the things that I see people talking about a lot. Americans can work together with people different from ourselves to find common ground that can strengthen the country we all love. Okay, so this is what I was talking about earlier. This is something that we used to do that I don't see people doing a lot of anymore, because it's like they've shut themselves off and they're completely incapable of getting to that point of finding common ground. There's very few people that I can do this with anymore. I have friends that are on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum from what I am, on both sides, and it's some of them are able to have those conversations. Some of them are able to come to an agreement, find that common ground and things that they enjoy. I mean, for a lot of us, it's music or toy collecting or something, where we're able to find a common ground and actually, still maintain our friendship and have productive discussions on things. What common ground is there to be found? What voters want and America needs are leaders who seek relationships with their adversaries rather than control over them. Since we are not going to have a one-party rule, we need politicians who will work together. Excuse me. And that's 100% right. We need politicians who will work together to come to agreements between them. Our elected officials are representatives of everyone in this nation. Everyone in this nation is different. We are made up of a melting pot of different ideas, different backgrounds, and our elected officials are supposed to be representative of the people. So why should our elected representatives not work together? Look at the Democrats versus the Republicans right now. Since we basically have a two-party system, we're not really. We all know that it's not something that we're going to end up with. We're not going to have multiple parties in government. That it's going to remain a two-party system, at least for the foreseeable future. But none of them can work together. The Republicans can't work with the Democrats. The Democrats can't work with the Republicans. Hell, half the time, the Democrats can't even work with the Democrats. And the same for the Republicans. Leaders who aren't just out for themselves and who will work for all Americans, not just those who voted for them. As I said earlier, if you are an elected official, you are not representing just those people who voted for you. Your job is to be a servant to all of the people. Healthy, honest debate is a first-rate tool for deciding between two options, but it is a lousy, ineffective tool for creating a better option. If two sides are debating second-rate proposals, the debate itself cannot generate a better one. Dialogue, however, is designed for precisely this purpose. It's it's designed so that people can actually come together, spitball ideas, and find the best option, a better option. Because my idea and your idea may not be that good separately. And that's something that we need to realize, and something that we need to recognize, is that our separate ideas may not be that good, but together, we might be able to find a solution to something that works for everyone. So I will close with saying that I hope it does not come to a hot civil war. I don't want to see this. I don't ever want to see this in America. And most of you, I know, don't want to see this happen in America either. Take into consideration the results of that. We have a lot of people in this country who want to see this happen for the purpose of, well, my side is the right side. Well, you talk about like taking the government back for the people. Which people exactly? Which people are you talking about? Are you talking about the religious groups? Are you talking about the atheist groups, the conservatives, the liberals? I mean, which group exactly would you like to take this country for? And what are you willing to do to impose your views on the other half or the other 20%? We have so many small groups of people in this nation that all have different ideals about how it should be ran, about how this country should be. Who exactly do you want to take it back for? Do you want to take it back for your side? That's exactly what most of you want. Most of the people that talk about that shit, they only want to have their view seen. But that's not America. That's not what we were meant to be.